Ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday morning on the last weekend of July. A team of volunteers were working hard here yesterday, preparing the Great Meadow for the arrival of a selection of amazing vehicles, coming here for the first ever Kedington Steam and Vintage Fair. Welcome to the Kedington News Steam Special. As I said, volunteers worked for 2 whole days to get this particular show on the road, which I think calls for some particularly stirring montage music. Ah, the very thing.
Western.
Mustang Sally. Guess you better slow Mustang down.
I'd call it more rock and blues that brought the day of setting up to an end with a fantastic gig from the Ditch Dwellers, also known as Nick and Bob, incidentally the driving force behind Bobstop, which is coming on September the 3rd, and I'm sure I'll be mentioning that again shortly. An excellent performance was matched by an equally excellent audience that led to a great night for everyone concerned.
All you gotta do is ride around Sally. Come on! Ride, Sally, ride. All you gotta do is ride around Sally. Ride, Sally, ride. All you got to do is ride around Sally. Ride, Sally, ride.
And so, eventually, to bed. For the following dawn would bring the grand opening of the very first Kedington Steam and Vintage Fair. Our camera was there from the very beginning. So this one, what is the actual technical name for this machine?
This is a traction engine.
This is a traction engine, before I go calling it anything else.
Is, as opposed you've got traction engines, steam rollers are rollers with rolling wheels.
Because you you can sort of obviously see them when you
but
find
they do
them.
tend to get lumped together as steam rollers or steam tractors.
Traction engine, so it is traction engine.
And this is classed as an agricultural traction engine, so it was used for agricultural work.
So on farms for...
They were used for driving threshing machines, wood saws. They were obviously mobile, but really just mobile locally from going from one farm to another. Most owned by contractors.
And so would they have been used mostly for pulling stuff, or was it more of a source of energy?
A mobile power source with a belt put around the flywheel.
And that'd run all the other machines that you'd have in the farmyard?
Yeah, they're mobile power source really.
What sort of time period would this machine have been working?
This is 1899, and it had a proper working life through to about 1935, I think.
So it made them to last in those days?
Yeah. This design sort of 1880, 1885 was where the design evolved to this sort of classic design. Nothing much changed after that really. I think the last ones were made. The last ones to be made were steam rollers in 1934 on.
For a very specific purpose.
Yeah.
So after that it went to sort of tractors.
Well, the First World War was the death of these really, because they sent over so many tractors from America just because they were cheaper and quicker that spelled. So they phased in a lot sooner, whereas the steam rollers still did a very good job.
Specific job of
couldn't
what they
be
did.
improved on by a motor roller. This finished its life being used as a mobile boiler to sterilise potatoes or cook potatoes for pig feed.
Oh wow!
Just chopped up in the corner of a yard.
So once it finished being a potato boiler, did you sort of find it yourself and restore it yourself, or was that?
No, it was purchased by a guy local to here at Castle Heading called Cyril Philp, quite a famous collector, and he purchased I think 23 engines from scrap, saved them from scrap, and had a big dispersal sale in '95. But prior to that, the custodian of this one, John Garwood, I'm just minding it today for him. John was sort of befriended by Cyril, and I think it was 1977 he started restoring it, did all the work outside, and it didn't need any boiler work, but everything else was very, very rusted. It had just been stood outside for 25 years.
Not going anywhere,
not going and rusting away. And then so then John was like the custodian of it, and had a new firebox, which is a more major boiler work in about 10 years ago now, I suppose.
I suppose the boiler, you've got to be very careful to keep that in top condition.
The boilers are inspected by a boiler inspector twice every year. They inspect it cold with it stripped down and the fire out, measure the thicknesses and check everything for signs of wear. And then just the boiler, not the mechanical side. There's no MOTs
well, I suppose the boilers are the dangerous bits.
Yes, indeed, yeah. And then they come back, once they put all that together, they come back with a fire in it and then witness the safety valves working and the means of putting cold water into the boiler is working, check the pressure gauge is working and the indicator, the water level gauge that tells you how much water's in the boiler. So yeah, they're pretty well regulated and safe and checked on.
One thing I'm going to ask you because, well, this is Suffolk,
Yeah.
and everyone in this village knows about hard water. Do you get problems with limescale?
They do, yeah. I mean, ideally you fill up from streams and where the water's softer. There's various boiler treatments available that do mitigate it. But in actual fact, the hard water, people are telling me from around the country, the hard water, at least it's not acidic, whereas a lot of the soft water from Yorkshire, where on the moors and things, is acidic, and that's actually turns out to be worse than the hard water, because the scale you can deal with.
Scale you can remove, acid just eats and stuff. So.
All right.
Thank you for that.
That's all right, no worries.
Much appreciated.
No worries.
Okay, I've got a lot of friends, Serenity fans who watch this and now really like this.
Yeah, well, originally it did have another name. However, that name's not necessarily suitable for the modern audience.
Fair enough.
Basically, the chap who bought it out of a junkyard into preservation lived in a place called Fiddler's Lane, and he called it Fiddler.
Yes.
Which in the 1950s, a small man, jolly, playing on a little nose.
These days, not so much. Yeah.
Not.
It's amazing how language can change.
Yes, and I thought I am not driving around with an engine called Fiddler.
So an engine called Firefly
It's a lot more.
is quite cool in many respects. And so that was the guy who restored it.
It never got restored.
So you restored this one?
No. Basically, this engine worked it was lived new in 1920 to Wrexham Rural District Council.
Right.
Then Denbigh County Council ran it until 1965 when it was decommissioned.
And that was as a steamroller fixing roads and things like that?
Road making duty. And they sold it. This chappie bought it. And he ran it for a few years, and over the years it has had various bits have been mended, and bits have been done, but it's never actually been fully restored.
Right.
So it's pretty much original.
Excellent. So it's pretty much because it's kept working. It's never needed an actual restoration job, do it?
No, not a proper one, no.
Wonderful. So we really do have a proper original steamroller here.
I mean the canopy's new because that rotted,
It would, yeah.
and the front forks are new because one previous owner drove it into a bridge.
That never helps.
But other than that, pretty much all original.
Wonderful. That's excellent. And I was chatting to a bloke over there actually, telling me about the reason steamrollers carried on being in use long after most other steam vehicles had stopped was because they could go into reverse really quickly.
Not really. It's more of a case of they haven't really invented anything better.
Yes.
Because these were heavy. They didn't need to go particularly quickly. They didn't need power, because you can't go too quickly when you're rolling a road in anyway.
Yes.
And why would a council go and spend loads and loads of money on replacing machinery with, say, a diesel version when the steam
But
version.
you've got this lovely one working.
It worked just as well.
Yeah. And
Eventually,
I was, the guy there was saying also the diesel ones, because the gearbox, the gearbox of the diesel ones back in those days, going forward to reverse wasn't
no.
easy. Whereas these ones, you don't really change gear, do you? It's more a case of
You have many different controls. It's driving one of these is very different. Very different.
I can imagine.
You want to come and have a look?
Because they don't have clutches as such, do they?
No.
No.
Well, English engines don't have clutches. American engines do.
Oh right.
Right, you've got all different bits up here. That one over there, you've got here gears.
Right.
So you have first gear and second gear. So you've got 2 gears.
Okay.
Yeah? So you move this lever over, and it moves in, there's 2 gears here. You've got a slower gear.
Right.
Yeah? It's all how they mesh. There's a big gear inside here, and then you've got these that mesh in.
Okay.
So you've got the slow gear for really slow, you know, just gentle pottering around. And then you've got this one, which you'd move in for when it's on the road.
But going from forward to reverse, you just actually start the engine going.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah.
You once you're in a gear, you're in the gear.
Yeah.
For all you're driving around, you're in that gear.
You're in that gear.
You can't change gear as such. To change gear, you have to stop, move all the levers about, chock it up.
Chop it over and.
There's no point. Once you're in a gear, you pick a gear of what you want to do, sit in it. Then, over here, this is your reversing lever.
Right.
So, you've got all these little slots. At the moment, that's in reverse, yeah, but it's out of gear, so it can't go anywhere.
Right.
But you've got all these pegs, so that's how you've got reverse forwards.
Right.
And mid-gear, which is stop.
Right, and that just reverses the direction that.
Yeah.
That so the main flywheel changes direction.
Yes. So that's reversing that. And then at the top, a big lever sticking up is called a regulator.
Right.
That's your stop-go. And there's other things when you're on the road, there's other stuff to do, because you have to balance your pressure and your water. So in here, you get your water gauge, you get your pressure gauge. Now the pressure should be between 150 and 200.
Right.
If it gets to 200, it starts the safety valve lift, and then you're wasting water.
Yeah.
The water should be about half a glass where it is at the moment.
Right.
Now, if you're going down a hill, obviously the water will go out the glass.
Right.
So you've got to look ahead at the road and make sure, if you see a downhill coming, you've got over half, so when you go down the hill, it doesn't drop too low.
Oh right. So you've got so if you're about you've got to keep the whole engine full of water, so that if you end up tipped, it's got enough to.
Yeah. And then you do the same going up hills. You might got to make sure you've got enough pressure to get up the hill, but not too much water. That it's going to prime.
So that just as you get to the bottom of a slope, you just lower the water a bit.
The way to put the water in, you can only put water in, you can't take water out.
Right.
So you've got the green handle there, and this drive a thing called an injector,
Right.
and that puts water in.
That puts the water in.
You've got another form over there, that great big thing's a pump, that puts water
That
in.
puts water in. Okay. What happens if you get too much water in there?
Then you end up priming, and it throws all the water out the chimney.
Oh right. Okay. So it.
You don't want to end up with too much water.
No. So it just shoves that just water through rather than steam and.
Yeah, and you just end up with a mess.
Random bits of steam. It seems
That's
like
the
good
injector.
footage. So that's where the water, where
That's-
you put the water in.
This little thing down here has got cones inside,
Oh right.
and
Yeah.
it creates a Venturi effect, and it sucks water out of the tender and pushes it into this pipe, which then feeds it into the firebox around to cool you.
Okay, I'm going to pretend I'm asking this for the sake of my viewers who might not know, rather than the fact that I've not got a clue. But what is the Venturi effect?
Okay, right, Venturi effect, it's different angles within a cone, is the only way to explain it, where water, instead of sort of trickling, is actually sped up and forced through without any kind of mechanical need to do anything, if you know what I mean. So what happens is, rather than the water just trickling out, like trickling out the end,
It pushes it.
The effect of the pressure and the cone jets the water through.
Oh right, so it pushes it through with a bit of a.
Yeah, it's the same kind of idea as if you have one of those wine aerators.
Oh right.
And you know, when you pour the wine in, it seems to somehow speed up and spray into the decanter.
Yeah.
That's the same idea. It's a Venturi.
Oh right, so it gives it more oomph.
Yeah, because you've got to try. You're fighting pressure.
Yeah.
You've got a load of water already in that,
And you've got to
try and
force it in
more.
when you've already got the pressure in there.
Yeah.
So I presume this is a model of a far larger machine.
This is a 16 scale model, so's that.
Oh right, so
This is a big engine in real life. If you think that wheel on that side is half sized,
the,
so this is give you a comparison, this is your Scania of its day. So this you did the heavy haulage up and down the country. That's more your transit of its day, used to do the haulage around town.
right. So this was the big serious one.
Yeah.
So when you say of its day, what sort of era would it have been?
1890s through to the end of the First World War. The B6s were used by the Royal Engineers during the war,
Right.
shifting heavy guns and that sort of thing
Equipment.
around.
So, how big is the real Goliath? Well, if we put the picture on the right there of the scale Goliath and a picture of another steam engine at the same scale, then you can see how much bigger Goliath is than a normal steam engine. That's about 1.5 times the size of a normal steam engine. So imagine something 1.5 times the size of this coming down Silver Street. Of course, it wasn't just a steam fair. There was also a fascinating selection of vintage vehicles. I think we're going to need some more montage music. was there for a short time, as Saturday night brought a different kind of entertainment to the stage of the Kedington Community Centre in the form of local band Quaff. And yes, that is me on bass, bringing an evening of rock, pop and general partying, and helped in no small part, I'm sure, by a much praised selection of beer, as has become pretty much traditional for KCA music events. During the evening, a new prize was announced. Well, kind of the repurposing of an old prize. I'll let Matt Garwood and Joan Ford explain it to you.
KCA has run many events over the years. It's got Meadowlark in June, which is just gone. It's got Bobstock coming up in September. Another September 3rd, which is another great music night. Part of Meadowlark, in years gone by, has been a clay pigeon shoot. And within that, there was a trophy for the Alan Ford Trophy, which was for the highest score, the winner of the clay pigeon shoot. And this was an award that went on year, and it was very, very successful. In recent times, the clay pigeon shoot has ceased to happen, but in recognition of that trophy, we've decided to transfer that trophy to this show here, and it's now going to be the best exhibit at the Kedington show. And I'm here to announce the winner of that with Joan Ford. It's been a long day. Who are you? He's still sure. The winner of the best exhibit at the Kedington show goes to a Sentinel steam lorry.
Oh, yes.
Westmore steam lorry. So if I can invite Melvin, Camps and Martin Hunt. They take a lot of looking after. Every single vehicle has been here, from the station engines right up to everything. It takes hours and hours and hours of work to try and look after it. This particular Sentinel drove from Saffron Walden yesterday, and it took them 2.5 hours to get here. Oh, 1.5, sorry. Oh, you're faster than me. It took 1.5 hours, but it's taken them hours and hours and hours to get this engine up to the spec it's in, and it runs absolutely flawlessly. And when it came into the show, we could barely hear it turn up. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's certainly a credit to Melvin and mine for bringing this engine and for looking after it in the condition they are. And I think it's a worthy winner of the trophy.
Earlier in the day, I was lucky enough to get a conversation with the owner of that very engine.
Has she got a name?
Vector's Night.
Vector's Night.
Yeah.
She or he?
She.
She.
Right. No, it's a night, she's still a she.
It's a she.
Yeah.
They tend to be she's, but I always check just in case.
Yeah. Normally known as the old girl, affectionately we call her the old girl.
There's quite a few of old girls.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful machine. What was she used for?
She's a tipper lorry. On the back, depending which sets of pins we pull out, these pins here. There's a big hydraulic ram underneath there, worked by the boiler pressure, and we can tip to the back or to the two sides.
Wonderful.
And she spent her whole life for this firm Westmore on the Isle of Wight. We've got all the original sign writing. She spent her whole life hauling 10 loads of roadstone from a quarry to the quay every day. Very short working life, about 3 years. And in 1930, they put the road tax up. We got the original tax for £66 a year. They taxed them off the road basically.
because they were trying to get diesel lorries developed because they knew war was coming and they wanted steam off the road.
Oh, right.
So basically the bloke who was driving was earning £2 a week and the road tax was £66 a year. So you can work it out in modern terms. She was then had the body removed and she went on to heavy haulage. We've got some original photographs of her with a railway carriage on the back.
Wow.
On the Isle of Wight, they used them as holiday homes, and she was used to drag them from the dockside to wherever they wanted them as holiday homes.
Right.
And just before the Second World War in 1938-39, she was hauling 18-inch naval guns for the defence of the Isle of Wight.
Cool. So it's sort of that part of the life quite an active vehicle.
Yeah, and she ended up derelict in a scrapyard with a sister engine. This one was built in 1927. This was the only one the firm had new. She wasn't actually new then, she was 6 months old. She was a demonstrator when she was new. That's why she got all the fancy bits like the brass windscreens and the mud guards. They were all extras. And being a demonstrator model, they
put all the extra,
put all the fancy bits on.
So this is the custom job.
Yeah, basically, yeah. She's got all the bits on that you'd have to pay extra for. The windscreen was £15 extra. You know, again, the bloke was earning £2 a week, so it was 2 months' money.
2 months' money for a windscreen, but
yeah.
Did he get that free because it was a demo model?
Yeah, yeah. So this firm bought her when she was 6 months old, and the only owner she ever had. They had an older one of these, and the pair of them ended up derelict in a scrap yard. This one, the cab was burnt off in a fire. In the late 60s, a gentleman bought the pair of them, tried to with the idea of restoring one out of the two. This one was in better condition, so this one was actually rebuilt first, and the other one has since been rebuilt as well. So
its sister's about.
Sister is still about, yeah. Yeah.
Do they ever meet at steam fairs?
We haven't yet, no, not since Melbourne's owned it. You know, we keep sort of trying to make arrangements. And then last year we actually took her back to the Isle of Wight for the first time, and back to her old stamping grounds. A steam engine is relatively simple. These ones are more complicated. We always refer to them as the Formula One of the steam world. I mean, you've got a twin cylinder engine under there. That's your engine under there, twin cylinder. Produces 70 brake horsepower, but it's got to be right. If it goes out of adjustment, it doesn't go. Whereas, no disrespect, an old steamroller like that will run for years, worn out and falling to bits, but this one won't.
This one's
got to be right.
Right on the. Yeah. So it's very high power, but well, like modern cars, the more high power you get, the more technical and.
Oh yeah.
So what's the top speed on something like this?
Officially on solid rubbers we're limited to 12 miles an hour. We can do comfortably 20 miles an hour, comfortably.
That is actually really quite
the
fast.
The later models of these, they put on pneumatic pump-up tyres and they will cruise 30, 35 miles an hour. This is what they call a super model. They then made one which they called the DG, which stood for double geared, because this one's only got one gear.
Right.
And it's in gear all the while. You can't run the engine unless the wheels are going round. They then came up with the DG double gear, which was a 2-speed one. And they will do 40, 45 miles an hour. They're frightening. Yeah.
Presumably that was on the pneumatic tyres by that point. Yeah.
But the good thing is it's got good, you can steer it, it's got decent brakes, you can stop it. That's the big thing.
That's a big,
Yeah.
Special vehicles.
Yeah. And then, I mean, this is your boiler unit. It's basically the same as a steamroller, except this one stands upright rather than lays flat. With a little curly handle on the top there, if you can see it. That's where you drop the coal through, and then the chute drops down, the fire is down below the
Oh right, so you put the coal in the top and
the top, and the fire is roughly here somewhere, level with air inside. You've got a grate, and you just drop the coal in.
And the heat,
Yeah.
So quite a different layout. Was that because sort of
To give more room at the back for.
When other traction engine builders built steam lorries, they basically took a boiler unit like that and bolted it into a chassis.
Right.
So you had the boiler sticking out the front, you had all the engine in the cab with you, and it made the vehicle a lot longer. And cut off the load space.
So
Sentinels came up with the idea that put the engine underneath, put the boiler at the front, and you've got that much more
room,
carrying capacity.
and that practically gives you the modern lorry shape as well.
Yeah. Well, the last model they built of this was a shaft drive, like the modern lorry, with a prop shaft.
Oh right, so the engine was more to the front and.
Yeah, well they had the engine underneath. Instead of being that way, it was that way. And a shaft drive, when they changed the diesels, they just took the steam engine lump out and bolted
Put
the
the
diesel
diesel
in. They used the same chassis and running gear. Yeah, Sentinels came from Scotland originally. They were ship's engineers. And they were known as the older place, but the original place is Alley and McClellan. And Stephen Alley, all these paintings are all his. He was a genius engineer. I mean, they done ship engineers and everything. But before they put anything out on the market, they tested it with destruction. The engine under there, they had 2 of those in their own factory, running day and night on a generator on 50% overload for a year.
Wow.
Before they even put one in a wagon.
That's so properly, seriously tested.
Yeah.
Real engine.
Yeah.
So it's a very high-end performance company.
Yeah. They were taken over in the end by Rolls-Royce. They became part of the Rolls-Royce group. They even got electric lighting. She came out originally with electric lighting on.
And that's dynamo to run
Yeah.
that off.
And then where the drive sprockets are is actually the end of the crankshaft of the engine.
Right.
And the differential is actually built round the crankshaft. And it's supposedly the first ever limited slip diff ever made.
Oh right.
Again, that was one of Stephen Alley's
Designs.
Yeah, I mean, we can do sort of nearly 50 miles without having to worry about water. So, I mean, we have done 120 miles in a day with her, up to Lincoln in a day from Saffron Walden.
As Sunday morning dawned even brighter than the Saturday, Rector's Night was joined by a little baby Sentinel, which is wonderful because these things breed less frequently than pandas. In fact, quite a lot of new vehicles came to the field, many more vintage cars than the day before, and of course we're still to show you all the tractors and stationary engines that had been there all weekend. So let's start with the stationary engines. These are, quite simply, engines that don't drive themselves around. In the cities, they were used to power the Industrial Revolution. And out here in the country, they were used to run such things as saws and milking machines and any other farm equipment that needed power.
Oh right, okay.
And it's 1938, runs on diesel, and it's not quite the smallest one of the range, but
So that's only a little one.
it's only a little one of that range, yeah.
So how big did they get?
They got up to, I think it was about nearly 30 tonnes.
Wow.
About 90 horsepower. And I think
And
it
how
was,
heavy is that one?
that one weighs just over 3/4 of a tonne.
So they got a lot bigger.
They got a lot bigger.
Wow.
We had a big engine,
Yeah.
and like through there, felt through the wall or wherever.
And it runs several different things.
Fell up into the roof, probably what they call a line shaft. There'd be a shaft right into the roof with all massive pulleys on, and belts would be coming down to whatever machinery, and to switch the machine on and off, you'd have like a slider, and that just pull the like fast from those pulleys. And that there'd be the one what would be driving, and you have a slider, you pull the belt over, and that'd run on one what was just freewheel. That's how you switch things on and off. But of course, when electric motors came out, it simplified
a lot of that, yeah.
It simplified all of that.
Now I think it's time we had a look at all the other amazing vehicles that turned up this weekend. Do you have one last tune for us, ladies?
Has she got a name?
Empress.
Empress. And well, definitely the she then. Are they all she's, or is that just a tendency?
Even engines that have got a masculine name are very often referred to as she. So that's
Yeah. I've heard most of them sort of say, what's its name? Well, it's this, but we also call it the old girl. Is this
Yes,
the
yeah.
other thing?
This is the little Garrett.
The little Garrett.
The little Garrett, yes.
It's a Garrett, otherwise known as the Empress.
Yes.
And how old is she?
1920, so where are we? It's coming up.
Coming up nearly a century now.
96.
96 years. And what sort of era was she in service?
It was in service in Suffolk and Essex all its working life. It was built in Leiston in Suffolk and went to just outside Stowmarket. It was supplied by Stowmarket, a firm of engineers. They were agents for Garrett's. And it worked there for about 6 years, I think. Then moved to...
What sort of work would it have been?
Well, we're not sure on its early life. It was either for timber haulage, round timber haulage, you know, they used to cut the trees down and then they load them on, just around timber onto timber drugs. And they would winch it onto the timber drug and then they would haul it to the sawmill.
Right.
And it's possibly either started the life as that or as a general haulage, hauling roadstone or that sort of thing for road mucking or building bricks or something like that. We're not absolutely sure. It then went to Long Melford, worked there for several years, and it was owned by farmers. And again, I don't know what his duties were. It could have been thrashing or hauling stuff around. Then went to Colchester, and that was definitely on round timber haulage there because I met the family that had run it. And then it went to Earlscombe in Essex. It was definitely timber, thrashing and general duties there until about 1950 when it was laid up, and then my father bought it in 1957. So next year is the 60th year of the engine.
So it continued working in agriculture,
Yes.
well, quite late on compared to a lot of...
Yes, well, because the war, had it not been for the war, I think engines would have faded out in the late 30s, early 40s. But because of the war and the fact that you could get coal, it was indigenous to the country, whereas fuel for tractors and things had to be imported. So they were given a second lease of life, and that's why the engines really went into the 1950s.
It's strange, I get lots of different stories as to when different kinds of engines came in and out. So elsewhere, I've been hearing that some agricultural vehicles sort of faded out just after World War I when a lot of tractors got shipped in.
Yeah.
But this one carried on actually...
Yes, it did kill. It killed the firms that were making the Garretts and so on. It did kill them because there was so much war surplus after the First World War, and a lot of these were built.
But the old working ones kept on going.
Yes, quite a lot. They were like everything else. They were downgraded to lesser duties, and you know until they were scrapped.
But still very useful at doing what they...
Yes, yeah. They found a second and third duty for engines. Well, I mean, when this started in the 1920s, you had really was horses and small lorries, and there wasn't very much. This was a small prime mover, and then you had the bigger engines that did the heavy haulage, and then eventually things like Scammels and so on came along that could cope with the bigger loads, and so the engines were demoted into other lesser duties.
I suppose for hauling timber, it would have actually had to have gone sort of off-road into the forest.
They were very useful for that.
I suppose the bigger ones wouldn't be much good for that. So.
But of course, the fairly big wheels. I mean, they used to just charge for a ditch. I mean, abuse them.
So it's actually very good off-road machine.
Yes, yeah, they were very useful for the timber haulage. They weren't very fast on the road, but they could get in, winch the timber out, winch it onto the trailers and take it away. And it wasn't until after the Second World War when you had the ex-army gun tractors and things that had good winches, the Matadors and AEC Matadors and things like that they could put jibs on so that they could actually crane the timber onto the trailer.
Onto the trailer.
It made it just a bit easier work.
It was like a really varied life. It wasn't until Sunday afternoon that I managed to get to speak to the owner of this steamroller, Matt Garwood, the organiser of the event, which was great because it gave me a chance to ask him how it had all gone.
Right, Matt, take it away. We're on day two. Well, day two for the public. You've been here at the Steam Fair since Wednesday.
Yeah, moved on Wednesday. We pitched up with the caravan with the engine, and then Thursday was the setup day, so we started marking out and trying to work out how the plan fits into the field, making sure we had enough space for everything. Friday was and Thursday was also the day fences and everything just got set up, and we had a great response and so many volunteers came down. Massive thanks to everyone that came down over the whole weekend, but the support's been absolutely phenomenal. We've had so many people coming up helping and putting their names down to do rotors and things. It's been brilliant. Thursday was set up day. It was fences and it was everything else. Friday was the day all the exhibitors started arriving. We started realising that we had enough room, we had planned it out okay. We started filling up the spaces. It was a steady day, brilliant, a bit rainy. It's been raining quite a bit on the setup, but for the show, it's just been absolutely fantastic.
It's been wonderful. It's been sun for two full days.
Yeah, truly blessed here. So Saturday, Sunday, well, it's been brilliant. First show on the Meadows. We couldn't have asked for it to be any better. It's been met every expectation. We've had brilliant comments from around. There's smiley faces. Last night we just saw so many children playing and people having fun, beer and music and absolutely brilliant. In terms of exhibitors, we've had fantastic representation in all sections.
Even more today than yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, today is just absolutely phenomenal. We've got a whole field full of fantastic vehicles. We've got some really great commercial vehicles over there. We've got a Sedan, we've got the old Clare fire engine over there, the red fire engine has come from just down the road. That spent all its life working in Clare. We've got an old green goddess from just down the road, and then something a little bit more modern, one of the old Volvo tractor units there, which is it's absolutely brilliant. In terms of steam, we've got brilliant representation, so some fantastic full-size and miniature steam engines. It's lovely to have all these machines out and people looking around and enjoying them. Great number of tractors. We've got a couple more tractors turn up today. Brilliant representation. There's some working ones, there's some absolutely mint ones, but they all deserve their place on the rally field. Just couldn't ask for any better, really. We've had excellent number of people come and see us and join in. It's really nice to see people really appreciating it and appreciating the donation scheme and putting some good money in the bucket to help support it. The show's cost about £6,000 to put on in total, and it's wonderful to get the support from both the community in Kedington and slightly further afield. There's people driving in from all around the county and around the local area to come and join us. Yesterday I saw some familiar faces from out Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire way, and it's brilliant. The reports they're putting online and the support we're getting is absolutely brilliant. So if the KCA are in agreement, I think we'll
might do it again sometime.
It might be a good show for another year.
Excellent. Well, I have been asking all the people with the steam engines to tell me a little bit about their vehicles.
Okay.
So, first of all, what's this one's name?
Right, so this is quite familiar to a number of people who live in Kedington. It's the one that creates all the noise and chuffs past their windows quite frequently. This engine's called the Old Girl. She's been in the family now. We bought her about 18 years ago. She's an Evelyn and Porter steamroller, was used for making roads and rolling the roads around, and built in 1891, so she's 125 years old and is the oldest vehicle on the site today. She was bought, went to Bath originally, spent some of her early working life in Bath, and then moved around the country a little bit. It's amazing back even then how far these engines moved around, and ended up working back in Kent, where it rolled the roads around Westwards for a company, Western on Sea, working for a company called Lockwoods. It was bought into preservation in the 50s, and then went through a series of people in the preservation days around Kent, and then we finally bought her over to Suffolk.
So would it have been actually working up to the 50s?
Yeah, this worked right up until the mid-50s, I believe. And then it went straight into preservation, so she's never actually sat derelict as such. She's always been looked after, but because of that she's always been used, so she is heavily worn. Since we've had her, we've put a new firebox in and done a lot of work on the boiler. But boiler-wise she's absolutely spot on now. Motion-wise she's 125 years old, so she knocks and she clanks and she bangs, but she moves around. And although I might live in the village, we still had to travel 16 miles to get here. So, because we was at another show the other weekend, and the way the plans all worked out, and we had to bring her back here in the week. So we did 16 miles, took us 6 hours to get here.
What sort of speed does she do?
She does about 3 miles an hour. So it sounds slow, but when you're on it, it feels like you're going like the wind. You've got all the gears and all the crankshaft and everything clanking around in front of you.
It's wonderful. Well, thanks very much for that, and thank you for a wonderful steam there. Oh, and thank you for giving us a gig last night as well. That's one of the best gigs we've done in a while.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, thank you everyone that's come along. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and much appreciate the support from everyone, from people that have come along and people that have helped out. The support we've had the whole weekend from the pit man in the gates and stuff has been absolutely brilliant. So thank you to everyone.
Wonderful. It's been a pleasure to be here, and thanks to Sentinel.
Good stuff, Radio. Take care. Cheers.
Thank you very much. So, thanks again to Matt Garwood for putting on such an awesome event. Thank you also to the exhibitors for allowing me to ask such impertinent questions about their fascinating machines. And a special thanks to Martin Ivert for allowing me to use the music from his fantastic railway organ as background music for pretty much this entire video. If you happen to want a fairground organ at your event, you could go to fairgroundmusic.co.uk, where you can hire Martin and his railway organ. I'll be back very shortly with events listing for September, with even more events for Kedington, including Meadowlark, the auditions for the Ketton Players Pantomime, Ketton Players Murder Mystery Nights, the Kedington Annual Produce Show, all those things in the next episode, which will be up very shortly. And if you want to catch that, go to www.kedingtonnews.co.uk and it will appear there. You can also follow the link there to my Facebook page, or you can go to my YouTube page and hit subscribe, and then all the videos will pop up in your YouTube feed. I better go off and get that next video running. Until then, cheerio.